It is your smile that is most beautiful. It is your smile that is most beautiful. No, it's your eyes.
By the late 50s, the classic period of urban renewal was coming to a close. The classic study of urban renewal was a book called The Urban Villagers by Herbert Gans, about the destruction of the West End in Boston, on the faculty at Harvard, and worked for the Urban Renewal Agency in Boston, and he also lived in the West End, and so he had a sense of what was going on from both sides of the picture. He saw that the official explanation was not the real explanation. The official explanation was always, it was blighted, but then there were no objective criteria for blight. In the case of Philadelphia, blight often meant affordable housing. There were houses built in Philadelphia that were called Father, Son, Holy Ghost houses with one room on top of another. These houses were what we would call affordable housing. My parents, or my mother, during the Depression lived in a house on a big street. There were big houses on big streets and little houses on little streets. Her family paid $50 a month for a big house on a big street, rent, and the house behind them was a little house, and they paid $15 a month rent. So that's another word for affordable housing. It was suddenly declared blighted housing, and so it was all torn down. And so as a result, there was a huge lack of affordable housing, which meant that the people who ordinarily would have gone to live there, the lowest rung of the economic ladder, was now forced to take housing away from other people, always invariably in contiguous neighborhoods. It was the way racial migration moved. It always moved a block at a time. It moved north on Broad Street in Philadelphia. And so that meant that the Irish ethnic neighborhoods in North Philadelphia were under constant threat by this population pressure that kept increasing the more that housing was torn down. Okay, Gans makes clear, after looking at this thing, what the real program was. People cite Gans's book all the time, but they never seem to cite these passages. Okay, it is the local agency that selects the area to be proposed for action, and in most communities, the area's physical condition is a necessary but not sufficient condition. What seems to happen is that neighborhoods come to be described as slums if they are inhabited by residents who, for a variety of reasons, indulge in overt and visible behavior considered undesirable by the majority of the community. The community image of the area then gives rise to feelings that something should be done, and subsequently the area is proposed for renewal. Consequently, the planning reports that are written to justify renewal dwell as much on social as on physical criteria, and are filled with data intended to show the prevalence of antisocial or pathological behavior in the area. The implication is that the area itself causes such behavior and should therefore be redeveloped, which was a key tenet of environmentalism or behaviorism. In other words, the environment creates the man. The ultimate goal here, according to Gans, was to break up ethnic ghettos. This is a quote again from his book. The relocation staff's lack of interest in social criteria of housing choice was based partly on a desire implicit in much of planning and housing ideology to break up ethnic ghettos, in the belief that this would encourage people like the West Enders to adopt middle-class standards and behavior patterns. Moreover, the middle-class values embedded in relocation procedures assumed that nuclear families were self-sufficient and independent. Consequently, relocation officials failed to see the ties that existed between such families. They did not know of the existence of family circles and could not comprehend the desire of West Enders to be near relatives. That's the frankest statement I've heard from someone from the inside about the reason that these neighborhoods were destroyed. Blight was an excuse. Breaking up ethnic ghettos became the real reason. The situation in Philadelphia reached a kind of climax in 1963. It was a kind of climax across the board. This was the climax right around the time of Martin Luther King's, the great Civil Rights March in Washington, where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. The Quakers in Philadelphia, who had founded a group called Friends Suburban Housing in 1957, the purpose of which was to move black families into neighborhoods, moved the Horace Baker family into a neighborhood called Fulcroft. Using a white buyer, white person bought the house, then the black family shows up in the house. The people in Fulcroft, which was a southwestern suburb of Philadelphia, had already been ethnically cleansed largely from southwest Philadelphia. Okay, so they were already, probably had lost the biggest investment of their lives, which was their house. They probably had lost money because of blockbusting. Now they had moved into the suburbs. The deal, according to the new sort of unspoken constitution after World War II, was if you were a white guy and you moved into the suburbs, you were safe from racial incursion. You could live in peace. Well, that got violated again here, and there was a riot in Fulcroft. Fulcroft was a largely Catholic area, and so there was a lot of consternation in Catholic circles about Catholic racism. No discussion whatsoever of the fact that the Quakers bought the house, because for the most part, no one knew that the Quakers bought the house. John McGreevy is a professor at Notre Dame. He has written a book called Parish Boundaries, which is a book about the ethnic neighborhood, the change of the ethnic neighborhood. He mentions Fulcroft in his book. He does not mention the fact that the Quakers bought the house. The Quakers are simply not mentioned in his book. Now, the Quaker archives are full of documents that talk about all the operations they were doing. The Quaker archives are full of documents about how they brought Martin Luther King to Chicago in 1966. I asked Professor Greevy why that was missing from his book, and he said he had heard a rumor to that effect, but he had not pursued the rumor. So what you have here is recent Catholic history. History of the Catholic ethnic neighborhood is basically the story now of King Kong without the monkey. In other words, you've got all these people running down the street, but nobody chasing them. There's no monkey chasing them. Well, why are they running down the street then? Well, there must be something wrong with the people. They must be either crazy or something must be wrong with them. And that is precisely where the book ends, McGreevy's book ends. He ends by saying, acts of contrition are necessary, implying that the Catholics are the ones who have to come up with the act of contrition. No implication that the Quakers might have to do this or any other group might do it. I'm saying that this is the real story of assimilation in America, that it has been a story of covert social engineering, which is another word for covert ethnic warfare, and that this, as much as anything else, has led to the destruction of Catholic communities. It led to the disruption of the transmission of the Catholic way of life, and it has led to the parlous state of the Catholic Church in the country right now. Thank you very much.